Today is Yud Gimel Elul Tafshin Samech Tes. We're in Hemshik Samech Tes from the Rebbe Rashab on Amid Mem Tes and Nun.
Right, so we saw the union of Hanochas Satzmusai, and we saw that was the putting away of the self altogether. Bittul, Bekol, Siur, Koima, of the Adam, both the Sikla and Medesov, and then we saw, we're about to learn, I feel that's in the Midas and the what we call the Koichis of the Nefesh, and then we see I feel in Makshova Dibor and Maisa that it's also the same union of Bittul, of complete giving away of the self without reckoning with the gilui of the koichos, and that's because we saw that the bittul of hanochas satzmusai is mitzad the inyan of will, mitzad the inyan of rotzen, and not only rotzen but even l'mayla mea rotzen, the koyach to control or to even alter one's own rotzen. Therefore, we saw that the Eitzah to avoid what you might call the pull and the temptation of the midas and other inyonim is to be mesalik rotzeinei mehem. In other words, to take away the will. And like we brought down from the Kuti Torah, the pnimius of the midas is really rotzen. And so you take away, you literally drive away the will from that inyan. And so it brings you to a, what you might call an indifference to that matter, because it no longer has the pnimius of the koyach ha'atzmi inside it, which is the inyan harotzen. And v'chein b'mida isav shaloi yiltze v'shum dova she'ein inyan eloki, something which is not a divine inyan, he doesn't want it. V'hainu ad yidei she'mesalech retzeinoi mihem. Yeah, he literally removes his will or withdraws his will from them altogether. It is something which the world considers that to be a matter of taiva and lust. It's a thing that's worthwhile running after. Mikol Mokim, who this particular, I mentioned these botel, Hanochas Satzmusai, lo yiser berotzim bezer. He won't have any will for it, mishum shemasalik retaining bezer. He's taken away his will from the whole pnimius of that matter, lebli lispoil. He's not affected by it at all. In other words, a lot of people are making a whole big fuss out of it, and you might say they're all, to use the expression, they're all Google-eyed. You know, everybody's watching into this inyan, and he remains completely indifferent. It has no effect on him because he's taken away his will from such inyanim. He's been masalik his will. So for now we see the reader can ask intelligent question that it's put down, and we've learned it in these Maimonim, that the rotzen is a very powerful koyach. Rotzen is a very high koyach, and it's a koyach makif. It's not a koyach pnimi, that nefesh mitzad the makifim of the etzem and nefesh, and that's wherever a person's rotzen is, then that's where his whole etzem is, to a certain extent. There, the famous Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, that b'mochim sherateinei shel Adam sham hu nimta. That's where the man should. So how can you say he's mesalik reteinei? I mean, l'chera reteinei is his whole etzem. If his rotzen is involved, how does he? So we see from that there's a koyach atzmi in the Adam which is even higher than his rotzen, and we're still going to see even higher than his tainuk. He can even alter his tainuk. He can withdraw his tanuk from a certain inyan and place it elsewhere, rather than let it be involved in that particular matter. And that's the whole yesod of this idea of Hanochas Satzmusai. That Hanochas Satzmusai, therefore the Rebbe didn't say it was rotzein, he didn't say it was tainuk, he said it was toikeif hanefesh. the etzem power of the nefesh. But that means that even higher than the koiches atzmiyah, or the makifim of the nefesh, there's a very profound power, which we might call it almost bechira. We can almost give it the name choice, that the mensch has, that he can be balabos on his own self, even to his own atzmiyas dike koiches. And that's a very profound inyan. And that's the reason why it awakes Lamaila this inyan of the inyan of Chochmah. Because we saw that in order to get to Chochmah, you have to have this tzimtzum of the ha'atzmi. And so we saw that the necessity for that tzimtzum was in order to alter the whole nature of the situation. That up to now you got Gilei Lakus, also B'toikev. Gilei Lakus mamish. In Arich and Atik for sure, there's a Gilei Lakus mamish. Chochmah is the beginning of the Seder, which, like the Rebbe said, is eventually going to come down into Eilamus and even become Chochmah of Seichel Enushi, even human Seichel, which is a similar from Elikus, to alter into a state which can lead eventually to Seichel, but that's a huge change. I mean, that's a change Biatzmiyas. Because Elikus and Seichel Anira are two opposite, two extremes altogether. And therefore there had to be this tremendous tzimtzum. So we have to say that tzimtzum, or that's that comes from the Eibishter Biatzmei, because that's higher both than Seichel HaNivra and the Inyan Elikus Kam Yachad. Or that's the etzem of the Eibishter, that's an asinus koyah to the mensch, or that gives the mensch. And that, if you look carefully in Samech Tes in Tanya, you see where the Alter Rebbe brings over there that just like the Eibishter put everything aside in the inyan of the tzimtzum, so it's demanded of a mensch lamata that he put everything aside. So what's got a kesher one to the other? No, he writes over there, if you look carefully in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe is masbid that the whole inyan of the tzimtzum wasn't just that the Eibishter made a tzimtzum, no, he had a purpose. Avos Odom, he calls it over there, in order to give the mensch everything, as it were, to eventually gift the Odom, Lamata, with all inyonim, as you might say, as they are Lamaila. So we have to say that even the Etzem Koyach HaTzimtzum itself, the Eibush also gives the mensch. And that's even higher, even than his Ratzon and his Tainug, and therefore he can achieve things with that. And that's what we ask of him, that he lamata be bahanoches atzmusai, just like the Eibishter, it was Kavioho, Lamaila put everything aside and made a shorish for the inyan of Atzilus, and eventually Bri Yitzir of Atzira, and eventually the Olam Hazeh Atachtoin. But that's also neged Kavioho, the whole Metzias of Elikus. Elikus and Nivra are like two opposites. And we have to say that that's what the Rebbe means here, that you can be Misalik your Rotzen, and in a second we'll see even a bit more than that, even the inyan of Tainu. You can withdraw even the highest powers of the soul and put them elsewhere, and the Nasinas Koyach of them is this inyan that the Tzimtzum that the Eibishter made to produce Chochmah. And that's what we saw in the Chitzenius of Chochmah, which is Shait the Nivroim. Ultimately, well, that's was needed a tzimtzum, not a parsa, even a parsa, not another. And therefore, we have to say that it's like the Eibishter does it, and then he uses that, having done it, as an asinus koyah for the mensch. In other words, that everything Hashem does, Lamaila, that comes down Lamata into a form of giving of power and giving of koyach into the Odom Lamata. And therefore, if you study carefully that perek that I mentioned in Tanya, then you'll see that that's the implication over there. And if you can act in such a way that the thing is no longer nogeya, no longer affect you, that you're not mispoiled from that. But belidli his poil. Laheifer. Yuchaliye she is sani. And in a different way, Laheifer means in the other way around, he can be misanig, be'izadova shehu tzar l'nafshe. He can even do it the other way around. He was just taking away his rotzen for something that he does have a rotzen in. he would like to be attracted to, but he takes the attraction away. So here, says the Rebbe, the other way around, you can sometimes do things which you would never want to do. In other words, you can actually force yourself into something which is normally very distasteful to you. He said it is possible that a man can even take a tainuk in something which is really a suffering for him. And Yirtze he would even want to do it. That those people, they take simcha in suffering. Yes, so there's two dagas in that. There's even if it's smeichim b'yisurim, because the mensch knows that Ali Day, the Yisurim, will have a tikkun. That will be a tikkun for his avedas and for his avoinah, and all the things built in return that he's done. And then there's a higher in that he knows that Ali Day said, he's being, how do you call it, mezachik, and purifying his kli in such a way that he'll be able to be closer and more, as it were, oiske, more close to inyonim ruknim and naizim. Therefore, he's happy about suffering. And therefore we find that there were great Oidi Hashem and great tzaddikim that they took on themselves in Yonim Bewul and Barotzen and Besimcha, they took on themselves the Yinif and Yisurim. And as it's brought down in the Gemara, Baba Metzia, Beneger to Rebbe, Rabbeinu HaKodesh, that he took on himself Yisurim to be Metachen, which he felt that he'd done incorrectly. And it's written that he was, that he was willingly Mekabel all the Yisurim, because he knew that would be the tikkun for him. So we see that you can want something for a higher reason, which normally that's a tsar and a suffering. And therefore that's the Indian of Smeichim B'Yitzurim. וכל זה הוא רק מצד תוקף שבנפש שיש בו הכוח לסלק רצונוי מאיזה דבר שלא ירצה בזה כלל. And he said this is not mitzad seichel, not mitzad midas, not mitzad regesh, not even mitzad rotzen v'oinik, but it's mitzad the toike, the power that's put in the nefesh be'etzem, that he has the ability to take away his will from some inyan that he shouldn't want it at all, even though normally he does want it and he would want it. Ve'ein adover noger lo klal ispoil mizeh, and it no longer has any effect on him whatsoever, that he should have a reaction, an emotional reaction to it. Lispoil mizeh.
Regarding a Beinani, I thought we say that the Beinani always has his desires. He just has to do a skavi, he just has to not do it, but he's always going to desire.
So that we didn't say here that through the taking away of your rotzen, that you've been mahapik the rotzen altogether, and it's no longer there. What we're saying is that when the rotzen occurs to you, the desire for a certain thing, you have the ability to take that rotzen away and remove it at that particular time. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got rid of that rotzen altogether. It could be that that's an ongoing situation in your life that you have to fight with your rotzen against these rotzen, or fight with your teikif hanefesh, a neged rotzen, they say. You got the idea? We're not necessarily saying that he's reached the madrega of a tzaddik where he no longer has the rotzen whatsoever. But when he does have it, he's able to remove it from the scene when it occurs. So that's all in what we call the main koiches hanefesh, seichel and midas, even klodi. So he said, "V'chein b'machshava dibur u'maisa." Machshava dibur u'maisa are what we call in Tanya the levushei hanefesh. They're not the etzem koiches of the nefesh, but they're the levushim, and they're the things that we meet with the whole time. Our thoughts and our speech and our deeds, they are the outer garments of the nefesh. So he says, "Shaloi yachshoy machshavis chutz ki im." B'machshaves to Torah. You will not think a out thought, how do you call it, a thought from the outside. You will only allow his machshavas to be in inyonim of Torah. You only think in inyonim of Torah. But you know the famous mashal that we once bought from if I had it from Rab Nochem Olav Shalom. He said there was once a Maisa after the Bolsheviks took over and they had to Mavatal the whole Tsarist government, and they took over. There was a big statue of one of the Tsars was in the middle of Moscow or somewhere like that, and so they had a bit of a fence around it, and then they had a guard guarding this statue. So somebody came up to the big officer, he was in charge of the guards, and he said, what are you going to guard there guarding the statue? He said, Monosha. He said, if you guys still hold from him, then you're not communists. He said, if you don't hold from him because you're communists, then what do you need a guard to guard him for? So he said, oh, you don't understand at all. He said, the fact you're asking that question indicates you don't understand anything. I don't need the guard to guard me the statue of the Tsar. I need to have that place, and I should put the guard there, that I should know where he is. If I know he's there, then I know he's there. So that's why I have to have a guard on there. So the statue is just a place that I have to know, and I put the guard there, and I know where he is. I see he goes. In other words, he doesn't need the guard to guard the statue. He needs the statue to tell him where the guard is. That is, once the guard's there, he'll know where the guard is. So he said, the same with Inim from Machshava. He said, you have to know. No, I'm sorry, I missed on the main part. So he said, because, he said, if the guard is nit dorten, he said, he's for sure somewhere else. He said, if he's not there, then for sure he's somewhere else. So I got to know where he is, so I put him alongside the top. Because if he's not there, for sure he's someplace else. So he said, the same with your Machshava. You got to know exactly where your Machshava is. You got to put your Machshava into something. Because if not, then you can be sure that it's somewhere else. So that's the end of Machshava. So therefore he said, you got to guard your Machshava, that it should only be Machshava's the Torah. I see you guys. Heavily under the influence of Elul, you also into Tshuva, Tatua, you can't grasp a Siddish equip. Behind them, how do you do that? How do you be placing your Machshavah the whole time only in Torah? Al Yidei Nesinas Nafshay. Yeah, that you gave your soul away, literally. Shenoisen es atzmei linyone elokuz. He gives himself away entirely to matters of divinity. Lazoish kam machshavoisov heimo rakbelo. In other words, it's totally like we saw before, that the machshavos follow the koiches. In other words, wherever your koiches are, your seichel and your emotions, well, that's where your machshava divorah maisa. So he said, Alidei, what we saw this Indian of the take of the to give itself away only to Inyone Elakuz, in your seichel and in your midas and all the chiyo koima of the man, then also in your machshava divorah maisa, you'll also be like that. So therefore, since he's given himself away completely with the take of hanefesh in Yonim of the koiches hanailim yoter, therefore it follows that it's easier for him to control the lavusha nefesh. They will also follow the main giving of himself, in which direction he has given himself, and they'll also be only in Elam. Kamoi kain b'dibu. Similarly, in infant speech, ukamoi boilam piv miladaber bara. It's a lesson in our sages, boilam piv. He causes his mouth to stop. He stops his mouth from speaking evil. Like the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya, in Perikov Zion, that one of the biggest iskafiyas, one of the biggest breaking of the Yetzer, or the Nefesh Abamis in the Yetzer Hora, is when you're in the middle of a gishmach how do you call it, speech that you make in the middle of some Gishmach Dibur, to stop, not say anymore, to stop absolutely is a very powerful effort on the part of the Iskafia. Because Dibur has got its own particular momentum, it pulls the mensch in, as is well known in the Indian of Leitzonas and Lashon Hara and Nochazol Chinyonim. Once you get started, you get excited and swept into it, and it's very difficult to stop. And therefore he uses the word boilem, because it's well known that nowadays to cause the car to brake, to put brakes on, it's called livlong, to cause the car to brake, to stop in the middle of a speed, and therefore the brakes in a car, they're also called blamim. It's a noun from the word boilem, that they are things which cause something moving powerfully to stop. And therefore, boilem piv, you have to stop your mouth in the middle of a talk about some Indian that you're really enjoying it, but all of a sudden you realize that maybe you shouldn't really be saying all that, and therefore you got to stop. Well, that's the Indian also of Hanochas Atzmusei. And a further Indian, Chein B'maisa, Liyei Sur Mira Ve'asei Teiv B'peil Mamish. You have to turn away from evil, and you have to do good, B'peil Mamish. In other words, not to say, oh yes, I'm a good person, of a B'peil, it never really happens. No, it has to be B'peil Mamish. If somebody comes and asks if it's stock, you have to give him stock B'peil Mamish. You can't just say, well, would it be nice for him? Maybe I'll give him next time. No, you have to give B'peil Mamish. And so Mirah, that if you walk in the street and all of a sudden you could look at something which maybe you shouldn't, you have to be able to turn your eyes away and not look. So Mirah, V'asei Teiv, it's got to be B'peil Mamish. It's not just, oh yes, it would be correct to do that, and I really hold by doing it, or if you don't do it, you've got to do it b'poel mamish. With all sorts of inyanim which are connected with the inyan of Sur Mirah, that one can be tempted to do all sorts of inyanim and all sorts of maises, but therefore you have to be able to prevent yourself and turn away from it, and in doing good, you have to do it, as is well known, the famous statement of the Gemara that mitzvah habor liyodcha al tach mitzena, that if a mitzvah comes to your opportunity to do it, you should do it immediately. Don't put it off, because if you do, then the mitzvah becomes cholila comments. And therefore the Gemara says mitzvah habor liyodcha al tach mitzena. You don't delay it or put it off, and that's from the word comment. And therefore the oasis of the word mitzvah and the oasis of the word matzah, or matzois, are similar oasis.
What's the pshat of comments?
Oh, what do you think? It becomes all a lot of yeshus and gaiva and gornished. Eref ha, mitzvah habor liyodcha al tachme mitena. Mitzvah habor liyodcha, you got to do it immediately on the spot. Pearl Mamish. Everything's got to be activity of Pearl Mamish.
How can a mitzvah that you didn't do become gaiva?
Huh? How
can a mitzvah you didn't do, you pass over, become
gaiva?
Oh,
because you become afterwards, as a reaction on the part of the Nefesh Abami, but he says, you see, you're saved by not doing that, instead of being involved all those hours. Now you got time. And now you can do something that you really like to do. You're a fine person because you used your time in a better way. In other words, that the Nefesh Abami talks him into the fact that he really gained from it. Because a mitzvah is a tircha. A mitzvah means you become involved in it. It takes your time. And so what happens is that you say, oh no, I'm fine. Not only I didn't become involved in all that, but you see, I use my time for better things. You got the idea? So you become a whole sort of a whole yesh from not having been bought. That's the pshat. And over you have to do things b'poel. B'poel mamish. V'chol zeh hu b'koyach hachokma shebenefesh. Well, that all comes from the union of hanochas atzmusei, the power of Bittul of Chokhmah, Lehizgaber al Atzmei, Ulehaniach es Atzmei b'chol tzir koyma shalei, to take power over yourself, to gain literally control and victory over yourself, yeah, and to set yourself aside in the whole, what you might call, shape, or the whole makeup of yourself, yeah, from what you might call top to bottom, the whole tzir koyma of yourself. Meaning in Seichel, Midas, Machshava, Dibur, U'Maisa, all the inyanim from above right down to below. Right, we pointed out that the inyan of emes, the word emes, is the first letter of the Aleph base, the last letter of the Aleph base, and the middle letter of the Aleph base. In other words, that you've got to be on the beginning, the middle, and the end. The whole tzir koyma has got to be devoted entirely to the Eivish's Kavanah, yeah, to Elikus. So that's quite an achievement. I mean, like we spoke last night, but it's not an easy task. But that's the inyan of a chosid, and the inyan of a adam, how he's supposed to be, al-pi Torah and al-pi pnimis Torah. That you're supposed to be devoted completely to Elikus. Amir says the Rebbe Ali Deiseh Goyrem Lamailo Gamkein Bebchinas Hatzimtum. So isn't it amazing? Dokum Tois that if the Eivishter didn't have Yidden, and if he didn't have a Yid somewhere who was acting this way, that he was Maniach Esatzmai Alatzad, then things wouldn't happen Lamaila either. In other words, how do all these things occur now? They occur through the void of Yidden. So you might say, how many Yidden really act this way? So the answer is that it could be not a tremendous number of Yidden do, but there are Yidden that they do, right? That they do act this way. They give themselves away entirely in a nation as such, Yelagamre to Torah and to Elikus, and not to think other in Yonim Beklal, or they are the ones that the whole world is, the whole symptom of the Uyesh or Lamaila Mea Chokhmah, to lead to Chokhmah, Lamaila is dependent on such people. And if for a moment there wasn't such a person somewhere, then
What would stop existing?
Rachmanin and Klan, the whole Seder Vishtalshus would just stop. And they come to us in this manner. And if he said that with that it's understandable a little bit what the Alter Rebbe said, the famous Pisgo. The Alter Rebbe was brought down on one of his Maimorim that if one real tzaddik, one person who was a real tzaddik, would just really want Mashiach and really do everything to bring Mashiach, the Mashiach would come. And according to another source, it's mashma that either the Baal Shem Tov or the Alter Rebbe, they said if a whole kehillah, if one kehillah of people, one group of Yidden, the Mashiach would come. In other words, we see that maybe it doesn't necessarily need the whole ganze Klal Yisrael to be all uniform in a Gevitza Zach. Although we do need that somebody really mean it serious. Somebody's got to be really involved. That causes that symptom that the Eibishter Hanochas Atzmusei Kaviyochel, that the Eibishter also puts himself aside, and that's exactly the Lashon of the Samech Tes in Tanya. If you look, that the Eibishter puts his great light, the Ora ain't safe mamish, on a side, until the whole Gili will be in the form of only a Yud, like we saw. It's only like a small Nakuda, Bi'alma, Legavi, the whole air ain't safe, and therefore it'll be a Gilui, but Chimtum Otsum Liyesh is Savas HaChochma, Shu Reishis HaGilui, that's the beginning of revelation to the Makablim, V'acha HaChimtum Di Yud, after that Tzimtzum, which is the Yud, Ubchinas Ahei, we move from that Yud to the next letter of the Shem Havaya, which we're talking about now, represents the Esser Spheres the Shem Havaya to Latata. After that, we come to the union of the K, Rishoina, the first Hey of the Avish's name. What that's already Aish Pashtas, Uira Vareich of the Bina. That's already the spreading outwards and the expansion in length and breadth of Bina. Now, length and breadth in expansion is almost a complete opposite of a Nakuda. A Nakuda is an intense, unexpanded in and expansion into in a form of a development and a opening out. Ishpashtas, well, that's almost the opposite of the Nakuda. So here we see then a new type of development altogether, and therefore the K has also got three sides. That's a Inifan Ereva Varecha, a K. Tehine Beginners HaChochma, She Reishis Agilui, Emes, the Rebbe, the Inifan Chochma is the beginning of revelation. Mikol Mokem Hari Einze Beginners Tfisa Adayin. So here we see another very important point. What does it mean, Emes, revelation to Mekablim? We're giving down now to the spheres, which are eventually going to become the shurish of the Ashpur into the Nivroim. Yeah, so what does it mean that you've given from a higher level to a lower level? Well, that's when the lower level is what we call tofes, what you have to give. And tofes means grasp or tfisa, but more than just grasp, it means that he's got, how do you call it, a hold on it. He's got his hands on the matter, to use the expression. In other words, it's become completely his with a, how do you call it, a surety of hold. In other words, he says, yes, I've got this, and I know it, and it's part of me. As you might say, it's inseparable from me. That's in the word tafisa. And therefore in Perek Hey, in Tanya begins, the Alter Rebbe begins Perek Hey with Ulateis of his Biur Loshen Tfisa, Sha'oma Eliyahu. He brings over that whole in the Alter Rebbe must be the whole concept of Tfisa in Seichel. That means, that you become one thing with what you understood. You grasp it in such a way that you literally hold into it in all your being. So that's the ultimate idea of giving from one level to another, is that the level which is receiving has tefis, that eventually is able to say that it's tofes b'ha'inyan. So how do you get to this in Chochmah, albeit that Chochmah has already begun a revelation, but it's not tfisa, therefore it's not emes, a revelation. And therefore it's an einze beginnes tfisa. Ukenal, kimoshol haborach, like the lightning flash. Well, the lightning flash disappears. It gives you a tremendous revelation, but it's like it's gone from you again, even though you remember the light, but you don't really have the details. You can't very well say that you've grasped that in you. And if I said the Rebbe, in order to grasp, there's another koyach which the Avishta made in the Nefesh called Bina, and that comes into play, and that does this tremendously essential task of grasping. I'm sorry. Ubabina bo hanakuda bepinas his rachavus. Opposite, that the nakuda opens up into breadth, his rachavus, meaning self-expansion or self-breadth, going into developed and broadened concept. V'hainu shenifratu aprotim shebahanakuda, that the details hidden inside the nakuda, but in the nakuda there, behelem, the nakuda is just an intense dot, albeit, like we said earlier, this type of nakuda that we're talking about here is the beginning of the process of giving to the spheres. But it's the details, but the details are still intensely hidden inside the nakuda. Bina has the power to literally draw out those protim from the nakuda. And therefore, the result of the work of Bina is tefisa, that you grasp it. So here we see The way the Eibishter made the koiches of the Adam, and the way he made the mind of the Adam, that unless you have details, you can't grasp something. You can maybe see something of it. You can be aware of what the general idea is. You can have some connection to it. But to really grasp it in your own soul and become, in a way that you say, I am a valavos on this, I understand it, only when you have details. Details break the matter up into such a way that the mensch is able to grasp it. And therefore he says, so, that's the power of Bina, and that's the Kei Rishoina, and therefore it's in a state of Hisrachavus and development and Nishpashtas, because that means you've literally analyzed, as you might call it, all the details in the Nakuda, and then the mensch is able to grasp them, because a lot of literally small and carefully built things you can grasp, and then you can put them all together. But something with just an intense light, you can't really grasp it. If it hadn't been for that symptom that there was to bring about the beginning of Chokhmah, then you wouldn't have possibly been able to get to Bina. So here we see once again that the key of this whole symptom, and that's what we said in our chat last night when we were trying to explain why it's called a symptom, that the purest here is that we're moving from Elikus to the beginning of a Soga. In other words, that the Nakuda Chokhmah is like the beginning, Rashis. It's not a Soga yet, but it's in that general field, which means that it's moved from what is really Elikus into a field which is becoming the area of what you might call Hasoga of the spheres, what they are, the Mekablim. Since it's made that tremendous move, it's got into the field of Hasoga. Had it not been for that symptom, it wouldn't have been possible to have Bina or have the Hasoga in Bina. Even though the actual result of the symptom is not Bina yet. It's not a Soga, but it's the beginning, as we pointed out. It's like an intense point which contains the Inyan of Bina. Ki beloy tzimtzum actually is hagilui b'chinas hasoga. Ki eno be'erech klal. If not the Inyan, that tzimtzum that occurred to bring the Yud, then you wouldn't possibly have a Soga. And that backs up the pshat that we said last night, that we're talking here about absolute, what you might call chitonius of Chokhmah. Not that we mean the word chitonius in a bad way. The inyan of Chokhmah in a way which is making a child to us. In order to produce that, there had to be a tzimtzum. It's not enough parasa. And Afar said the Rebbe, that begins with the Nakuda, a process which can eventually become a Soga. But if not for that, a tzimtzum, then it wouldn't be be'erah. Why? Because that's etzem elikus. Like you said, ha'atzmas. That's etzem elikus, and this is already the union for Nasogas Anivroim. Therefore, had to be an absolute tzimtzum. Uba Vaida, we see this man is very concerned with the Inyonim, how they are in Avedas Hashem. Uba Vaida yesh loima, shalidei abitul b'chinas hanochis atzmusei, alidei zeh davke hu bo alidei hasoga b'elikus. So the Rebbe said that from that we see that if you're not prepared to make in yourself that symptom which will lead to the Inyan of the Nakuda, then you're not really going to ever really understand anything properly in Alikus. And there is what leads to Hasoga is Dafka being bottled. In other words, the opposite of what you might think. You might think that the way, how am I going to be a Baal Soga? I got to build myself up, I've got to become a whole macher and a whole understander and do all sorts of exercises in usage of the brain and in feichel and all sorts of mises. And then he says, no, what you got to do is just the opposite. You got to be botel and also to give yourself away completely. But bittul kol hatziyur koimo, and davke alidei zeh, you'll be able to come to Hasoga in Elikus. Then you'll be able to grasp be emes, because you've gone the whole way that the Eibishter does it l'mayla. And well, it's a tremendous thought, but you can't really have Hasoga unless you have emes of bittul. In other words, that the more the person is botel, the more he's shy to emes Hasoga. Seichel has got nothing to do with things like bittul seichel, the usage of the mind. So a person can use his mind, but he won't come to emes hasoga. He'll have all sorts of good ideas and he'll talk around, but he won't really be in the inyan be'emes and be'pnimiyah, only to the inyan bittul.
If you have that much bittul that you just don't,
you don't exist.
Yeah, why do you need to?
That's exactly what we want, my son. And then when you don't exist, what starts happening is that the Elokus starts working inside you. In other words, if you become, for example, it's put down by Rabbi Shimon, in the Gemara Masechta Sukkah, that he said that, what did he say? That Va'ishil b'nei aliyah mo'atim heim. So there's very few real b'nei aliyah, but if there's two of them, it's aloza ani v'aloza b'ni. Right? If there's two real elevated peoples in this generation, then it's me and my son Aloza. Yes. So everybody says, how on earth did he say something like that? I mean, that's being a little bit. I mean, you know, Harikot, I don't like to use the word, you know. So Chassidus says, no, pink verkehrt. That Rabbi Shimon was so botel that it was just Elokus talking in him, and it wasn't really him saying that. The Elokus was saying that the only person who's really holding by that in this generation is Rabbi Shimon. It wasn't him talking, it was Kilo. The emes was talking through him. What happens when a person to be emes botel, then Hashem helps him that the emes inyonim work in his mind and they come out not because he wants to say it, but because the emes is it. You follow? And he doesn't really want anything, you know, he wants the truth.
But how can he still want?
Oh, yeah. So you say he's so bodily he doesn't want anything. Oh, my son. He's not so bodily he doesn't want anything. He wants Ratzon Hashem. He wants Ratzon Hashem. Oh, verkehrt. He wants Gil Elokus B'Elul. Why does he want Gil Elokus B'Elul? Lama? Oh, the Hebsher wants Gil Elokus. Not that he wants Gil Elokus B'Elul. He should say, oh, I'll be able to have Elokus, and I'll be able to say, I brought some of Elokus into the world, and so on and so forth. No. Why does he want Gil Elokus? Because that itself is Ratzon Hashem. And therefore, some people's learn Torah. And it's written in Torah, in Pasha Yisrael. The Alter Rebbe says it. That the Tanoim, Amorim, all those people, why did they just talk at Elokus? Omer Ravuna. Omer Ravuna. Who's Ravuna? Well, no, when Omer Ravuna, that was Elokus talking to Ravuna. Because they wanted only Gil Elokus. They wanted that the Eivishter should reveal his will into the world. And they became the Merkova. They became like the chariot to which the Elokus was able to. So you might say, well, I'm not Ravuna. I not know. You talk about light from Ravuna. Or you can have a little shmaktabik desire that really the Emes, the Eivishter help. But you learn Torah b'bittul. You learn Torah because it's Ratzon Hashem. It comes out the right way. I think you have a slightly wrong idea. The bottle of Hanochas Atzmusi doesn't mean anything. Understand? On the contrary, Hanochas Atzmusi can be with the emes a teikeh. But it's a teikeh of the truth. The truth becomes a driving power in the mensch.
So he can have Tainug, but only from what Hashem has Tainug.
Yeah. Or what Hashem would want you to have Tainug. Yeah. Got the idea? No. That's the whole meaning of Shabbos. At Kavioch, we share Hashem's Tainug. V'karosel Shabbos Eineg. So some people say, "Oh, Karosel Shabbos Eineg. Shabbos the day we can have a good time, you know." Pack away a lot of kugel and all sorts of good Sachen, and, you know, schlaf the whole time and beat us and be something else, you know. Maybe go for a spazier on Shabbos, you know, a nice walk, you know, whole man. No, Samech Tes. It's what down the citizens on the country. Shabbos, you share the Avis starting, you know. The Avis is Messianic because it's the seventh day, that's his Kaviyachol. You share Kaviyachol, the divine name. And then it's almost a Shabbos. And then you forget what's going on. But don't forget that you got to be on time for the minyan, and you got to be on time for the shir, and you got to get up to Kriya Shema, come over and wash it. אי אפשר לי יש ספח בסטבינה אם לא בבחינת הצמצום. כי בלא הצמצום אי אפשר לי יש גדיל בבחינת הסוגה כאינה ברקלה. או בוידה, או דווקא צולי הנוחס עצמוסי, על ידי זה דווקא בו על ידי הסוגה. ועל דרך, לא יהיה בשמיים היא, לא יתמצא חולו. That's one of these sort of hints that you got to know how to pick up. לא יהיה בשמיים is in a pasuk in next week's Parsha Nitzavim. The Rebbe says, "Lo b'shamayim hi, lo me'evel yam." That the Torah is not in heaven, is not the other side of there. See, ela korev v'alecha hadov me'ed, v'ficha bilvav kolara. La'atzoi. Where have you read that before?
Top Sukkim.
Huh?
Top Sukkim.
Fopshim.
The Rebbe's Top Sukkim for the
It's like the old quip that the Snyder said, where's a chassid know a posik from? Or where does he know a Gemara? He found it in a Maimon. So where does he know? Where does he know? Yeah, from the 12 Pesukim.
It's in the introduction of the time.
Very nice. It's on the Shabbat in Tanya. It's on the absolute first page of the Tanya. But where the altar? It's a posik. It's a pasuk in next week's parsha, but that is the basis of the Tanya, right? So, lo b'shamayim hi, so the Gemara Masechta Eruvin, right near the end, yeah, and Daf Nun Beis Perach over there, and the Gemara says, lo b'shamayim hi, that the Torah is not in the heavens, lo timtzo Torah ela b'nemuchiha harua. Where do you find Torah? In the bittul dimension. Remember, the Gemara is also a pillar dikazah. Lo b'shamayim is not in the heavens, meaning not in the high people, but it's in the low people, the people who have been mevatled themselves. That's where you find the Shein Azah. Remember, that's the Rebbe. Well, that's the whole idea. It has to also be the symptom of an officer. That's Musay. Ki im b'mishu botel davke. The Seder, even Am Shocher, and the way and the manner of the whole Am Shocher, he shebetchila, nimshel b'chinas nekuda diyud. First of all, there has to be the gilui of the nekuda of the yud, otherwise it's too atzmistic. V'achachach b'chinas erev, in other words, that's the Seder. First of all, you have the bittul of the yin and a yud, and then you can hope for erev. In other words, you can't jump into erev. Doesn't go. It's not the way, and not the Seder that they able to matter. In other words, if you come and say, "Oh, I'm going to learn Seder, and I'm going to be a big understander, and I'm going to use my seichel, and my seichel, and I got a question, I got a teretz, I got something else, and I'm this and I'm that." So no, that's not the Seder. It doesn't work that way. First of all, there's got to be yud with the scene from Bitl. You got to give yourself a whale together, and then you become shy to the Erev Reicha. Then the Erev Reicha has a place of Erev Reicha without the Bitl of the yud. That's not the Seder, and it's not the Oifan. That's not the way it works. So this is that, right? In other words, we see that everything, every positivity comes through a negativity, as it were. Every Indian comes, every worthwhile Indian comes from a, as it were, like a beetle. But the Rebbe said there's been enough bitulim. Now we have to have Beis HaMashiach, Beis HaMikdash, Ashlishi, and Moshiach. No. V'am shoches ha'hei hu gam kein al yedei Yisrus Tata, here's the Peledikazah. That the Rebbe said that hay is also through your efforts. Just like the beginning of the Nakuda and the first appearance of the Inyan Torah is Alidei, your Yud, which is your Hanachas Hatzmusay. So he said in a similar way, the actual Gilui and derivation of the hay into Poyo is also through your Yisarus de Latata. And how does it work? Once you've had your bittul, once you've made your Hanachas, once you're a bittul dikah altogether, even the Nemut Ruach, then you can start using your mind, and you should. Yeah, you can get into a fiery enthusiasm, how do you call it, sparks of fire, which are born. In other words, not that chodila, a bottle dikah is supposed to be a, how do you call it, one bottle. No, on the contrary, through the uniform bittul you can come to emser fire. Rish Be'esha Tashuke, where does that Rish Be'esha, where does it come from? Yeah, from Emeskite, because you be Emes into Elakus. And he said, V'simchas hanefesh hanoil me'ayz bonanes. And from the simcha, which comes in the mind through his bonanes. Akameshikasu bebiri hazayra pasha tazriya beinyan hazay aleyhem meicha. You should sprinkle on them the water of the para aduma hazay aleyhem meicha hato. But that's written by the Nevi'im. That's written. It's not written in Pasha Tazriya actually. It just occurs over there in the Zayim Pasha Tazriya. And Biri Azayah is the famous work of the Mittler Rebbe, and there's also a Biri Azayah from the Tzemach Tzedek. But usually when they quote the Rebbeim, when they quote the Biri Azayah from the Tzemach Tzedek, they write Tzadik Tzadik, Biri Azayah of the Tzemach Tzedek. Stam Biri Azayah means from the Mittler Rebbe. And he's got over there a whole Biri on this Maimah Azayah in Pasha Tazriya. And that's written by the Nevi'im, that when the Eivisha took to the Nevi'im, and he made him at the first time when he was Makaradhan to be the Nevi'im in the desert, then it's written that they had to take off all their hair, and that to shear off all their hair and everything. So it's written over there that you also have to sprinkle them with the water of the Porah, to Hazay Aleim Meicha. So in that pasuk, there's a whole inyan over there. When I get to the inyan of Rotzei Vo Shoi, the middle has got a huge beer over there, and the inyan of Rotzei Vo Shoi. But you're familiar with those two concepts, that the going out and the beetle of the coming back, the arousal of the soul in the enthusiasm to go upwards, and then the beetle which follows it, the beetle to the Rotzen and coming down back into the world in a form of beetle to do things. But Poyo, and that's what we call the inyan of Shoi. So over there, the Mittler Rebbe is Mavaya, that every inyan, like we see here, causes a similar inyan la Maila, and at the beginning of the Maila. Later he gets involved in all sorts of differences between what he calls over there the Moichen de Abba and Moichen de Eima. You have the Moichen mitzad Bina and the Moichen mitzad Chochma. And he said the Moichen mitzad Bina, they can lead eventually in a delicate way to the inyan of the Nagoyim. And the water that you have to sprinkle over it is the inyan of the beetle of Chochma, and therefore Chochma is called Mayim, with the whole Riches Ha'inim. However, at the beginning over there, the Mittler Rebbe says that the inyan from Eimor and Bina is Simcha. Eim Habonim Smecha, but the Mittler Rebbe is Machadish. When I say Machadish, he emphasizes that the Simcha is not just in the birth of the Midas which comes out of these bonanas, but the Simcha is in the Etzemai's bonanas. And it's brought down in a lot of Maimorim from the Rebbeim that you can't really get to the ultimate uftu of these bonanas, which is the Gilui, the Midas, if you don't have Simcha in these bonanas. In other words, the Simcha in these bonanas, that is a very important necessity in the actual is bonanas. And that was a derivative from that Simchas HaNefesh, which comes in these bonanas. Well, that causes Lamaila, as it were, a inyan of broadening in the Keiloa in a form of Oregev Lamaila. Validei Ze Nims beginnen sis Rachvus the Kei Rishoina de Shema Avaya. Through that we call Lamaila the Amshocha of the Kei Rishoina de Shema Avaya. So we already moved now 2 Asians. Yeah, so we see that his bonanus, his bonanus is not Mars Chora. What do you call it? It's not, sort of depression and, sort of long quetch. His bonanus got to be document simple. Document ufkulate, as they say. And document through that it works. That causes Lamaila also the Indian and broadening of all the Inyanim. And the reason is because Bina is the Indian of its Rachavas. The way to get to his Rachavas is through Simcha. We see when I mention Simcha, he's broad. Everything expresses itself in an open and broad way. All his koiches come out and express themselves. And he's benign to everybody, and he gives everybody a shpoya, and he gives everything in the world a place, and that's called the Indian of his Rachavas. That causes Lamaila, Kaviyohu, in the Indian from Bina also the Indian of his Rachavas. That's the Indian that Alidei Simcha Lamata, you call Simcha Lamaila Kaviyohu. So we see that everything is totally in the Odom. Of B'chinas Vav Kei, or the other 2 Oases of the Shemavaya, the Latata, or that's the Indian, Zehu Indian Torah U, Mitzvahs. The Hine Avov, Ubchinas Amshocha, Sha'acha is Rachvus Tehei. He said the Indian Avov is the next letter in the Shemavaya, and that comes after the broadening of the K, and it's the Indian of Avov. Ukaneda, this Rachvus Tehei, he kemoishehu le'atzmoi adayim. Shazo Indian Bchinas Yud K, which are called Nistores. Hanistores Lashem Elo. Kaina was also next week's parsha, not far from the one we just mentioned. Korev Elecha, Meloi V'Shamayim, there's a pasuk in next week's parsha. Hanistores Lashem Elo Kainu v'hanigles lano ulevoneinu la'asos is called divrei haTorah hazei. So it's brought down in Penimis and in Kabbalah that are Nistores, are Yud K. Yeah, why are Yud K called Nistores? Because they are Chokmah Ubina, and we see by the mention Chokmah Ubina Dakile Atzmai more. Because what is going on in the depths of your reflection, nobody else really has any part in. It's all for you. It's all locked up inside yourself. And that's the Indian of the Moichin, and what you might call the characteristic of Moichin is to be le'atzmoi dak, local kach mishu. And on the contrary, you want to reveal what you've been reflecting about. It's very hard to get it all out into any form of ordered dibur because you're so profoundly involved in his baininess. That's the 2 inyonim of Yud and K of Chokmah and Bina, and they're called Nistores. Yeah, they're called the Nistores Lashem Elokeinu, the hidden parts, like Seichel She'ena El Azulas Davke. Yeah, Ki Shayak Gamli Atzmai, because the inyan of Seichel is not so much to another person, but it's shaykh to yourself. It's shaykh li Atzmai more. You don't talk out Seichel so much to the Zulas. Once you have midas, then you do. Alpaim Shona Kodma Torah Elul, the famous statement of the Medrash Tilim, that says that 2,000 years the Torah preceded the world. So everybody else was placed before the world was created. There was no time. What do you mean Alpaim Shona Kodma Torah Elul? And so the famous pious, matter of fact I saw it in another sefer just the other day, not from Chabad, a sefer Kabbalah. I stayed to it, Alpaim Shona Kodma Torah, b'diuk like Chassidus says. That's the Indian for Chochmah Bina. Alpaim is Aleph Chochmah, Aleph Chobina. I will teach. Aleph is less than also 1,000. Alpaim Shona, means Chochmah and Bina, and they're higher than the world. They're higher than Ashpoah in the Oilmas, but therefore they call Kodma Oilam, but not in time, but in Maila, as you might say, and in level altogether. They're Kodma Oilam. Omnam Havav Ubchinas HaMidas. Vav is already the Indian of the 6 Midas. Shehu Ubchinas HaGilu El Azulas. That's Davki going down to the Zulas, ki mi'elam heima, u'kaneda, and as well known. But you remember that passage because you said, well, most of the years said twice a day in davening.
When we go down.
Very good, very nice. In the Filas Apayim, that's in Kapitel Kofeda, we say when we make the Filas Apayim, over there it's written, so the simple pshat, if you look up in the Meforshim, you should remember your how do you call it, your rachamim, your mercy, and your chesed, ki me'elam heima, because they are everlasting. Me'elam heima, they've always been. As in Tash Rashi also, Rashi says, yeah, K'moshe Nasata Lord, and Marishan Rachamim came along, that's way back. It's always been chesed v'rachamim. Tash Chassidus under. So Chassidus says, Cher Rachamelcha, you should remember, you should be Megala, your midas, Rachamim, and Chesed, Ki Me'elam, because they belong to the world. In other words, that the world can't have a ashpur, the world being the Zulas, or the other inim from the Avish, unless Chesed Rachamim. Without midas, there's no giving to the other entity which is inim from Elam has. So therefore it's under tight. Ki Me'elam, because they belong to the world, they're shy to the world. Not a different way back. I say Kanoida, that's why he writes us as well. No, that's another pshat. So come to us that the Vav is the inim from Torah. Yeah, the inim of Shisha Sedrei, Mishnah, but the Vav is indicatory, but the inim of the sixth, what it's also got to do with the inim of the Torah. And then he goes on to say that the Keach Reina, well, that is the inim of Maisa. That's the inim of, how do you call it? Mitzvahs Papuyo. So that's the inim of Torah and mitzvah. So we got Mesiras Nefesh, and we got his Boninus Bereichev, then we got Torah and mitzvah. So it would appear from that his Boninus Bereichev is quite an important thing. That in order to make up a full Shem Havaya, you can't just have Bittul and Torah mitzvahs, you can't just have mitzvahs and Torah and Bittul, or no Bittul, and you got to have Bittul, and you got to have Yisrachim. You got to also be Mizbainan in Elakus, and then you Mamshik and Megala, all the Inyonim, Kamoshu.
Which way do you go?
Well, I suppose it's a good question, but if you're a Masudic manage, then you have to go in the order was written here. But it doesn't mean say you have to take 2 years to be Hanoch Musa. That's got to do, how do we say it, a couple of cells. It's got to be, as it were, to use the expression of his bonus. I agree, that takes a bit of time. His bonus, not just, how do you call it, a knip. Although you can't wait for Torah mitzvahs to become developed in Sponnen, Chodile. So we would say that probably Torah mitzvahs, they come first. Yeah, that's the first and foremost. In other words, we work no matala, and then we'll see more about that as we go along. Good.